Welcome to Just the Facts, episode number 30. It's a milestone.
30 is a big number.
30, episode number 30. Today's title is, what did we call this?
Battling outside influence.
Battling outside influences. What are some of those influences? We've got a couple. There's probably a lot that you might battle on outside influences.
A couple new ones a day.
I know in episode 29 we talked about, controlling the controllables.
Yeah.
This is kind of the uncontrollables.
Yeah.
You can't really control what we're going to talk about today.
That's the point.
Exactly. So let's tackle the first one. Is I noticed, we do a lot of research and do a lot of reading of different articles and stuff, but interest rates are starting to climb on cars, and that is going to have a little bit of an effect. So that I want to talk about it. We try to give industry insights here. This is not a CARFAX commercial, although we work for CARFAX at all. We want to talk about how interest rates can have an effect on the buying public, because as a result, I've also noticed that the retail prices, not just the retail prices, but the retail cars in general are starting to slip a little bit on sales and on the wholesale side too. And so I can't say that it's a direct effect, but I'm sure it's a piece of that whole puzzle and things that we just can't control.
Yeah. It's been a long standing that the automotive industry is an economic indicator, right? In fact, it's number one economic indicator. So when the public keeps getting fed with a fire hose that the world is coming apart, and then the feds start adjusting the rates, and you hear inflation, and you hear, you got the elections coming. There's so many things. It will slow the public down. Will it stop them? Not necessarily, but it will throw caution. It will throw up a caution, and it does tend to slow down spending, right? Cars are a necessity to a point, but they're also a luxury, which is why they've always been the number one economic indicator. And for the most part, maybe not so much the last year or two, but for the most part, they've always depreciated, where homes tended to appreciate, which is why they were considered the economic indicator, not the housing market. So again, things like the rates and things like inflation, that will definitely slow down the buying public.
Well, that's kind of what I want to talk about, and I don't want to get political on this thing. We just kind of keep it, as lighthearted as we possibly can.
There's no red or blue anywhere on this screen.
There's not. And so inflation's a reality, right? And
yeah.
So things are costing more. Gas prices, although they're coming down a little bit, are still very high. And so when you start to raise interest rates, and then you have all this inflation, and now you're paying more for rent if you're renting a house, maybe you just got into a mortgage and you paid a higher interest rate there on the mortgage. And so things are starting to add up. Right. And then so maybe, the wages aren't so much to really be able to afford that. So I think I have a question for you on this. When it comes to interest rates, people are getting into cars that maybe they can afford right now, but aren't going to be able to afford as things. We're hoping they get better. But as they don't, are we in for a shocker when it comes to repossession coming up? What do you foresee? Because you've been in the business for a long time, and that's why, and I know nobody has the blanket answer to that, and I know it's a predictor of what's going to happen, but we have seen this in the past, and I know you said this a lot, is the best predictor of the future is the past.
Yeah, and we have a bit of a storm coming together, right? Because for the last 18 months, let's say, the public has accepted that cars are up 20, 30, 40%, and they're still buying, right? They still buy. But then you start putting in the other pieces. If cars are up 30%, and at least that's what the public's been informed, and it's pretty accurate. And now you start increasing the rates. Those two go together to increase payments. The majority of our customers still buy on payment. They're still payment buyers. And payment,
is that a majority? Is it a high majority? Because I'm curious, but we've never talked about that.
Yeah, it's about 3/4, 70%, 60%.
Really, that high?
Yeah, it depends on what part of the market you're in. Because remember, even on a new car, a lease is still a payment, right? So you got to remember. Yeah. So most people, and here's the thing, it all is around disposable income. There's less of that today than there ever has been. When's the last time you thought you would get excited over $3.50 gas, right? Its disposable income has been greatly reduced. And so when you look at raising rates, there's a certain fear of that payment, right? And you just mentioned the repossession. It certainly has the ingredients to increase, right? I mean, math is math. When you're 30% above what was traditional market and you raise the rates, you're going to be putting people in a bit of a bind. Then we do that proverbial add 12 months to the loan. I don't know, we're to 96 months or something crazy. That just takes people out of the market even longer, right? And you don't pay down the car in the beginning. Everyone knows it's an interest loan. So when you take a customer who bought 30% above the market tradition and had less disposable income, which means they have less down payment, and you throw in a little more higher rate and you extend the term, nothing good there. There's nothing good there that's going to put them in a good situation. So 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, we'll see. But it certainly has the ingredients to be not good.
And we don't want to be doom and gloom. So as we look at the next 12, 18 months, and the forecast is definitely pointing to that we're going to have a little bit more. What does that do to the market as a whole? What does that do to the automotive industry? Because we've been there before. I said the best indicator of the future is the past. So we've been here before where, interest rates started to trickle up and there was a crash in the market. And, I don't have to remind anybody what happened in 2008, 2009.
Yeah.
But as we see that, what are some of the good forecasts in that? Like what good can happen to it? I mean, does it drive interest rates back down? And again, these are predictors, but it's worth talking about.
Well, none of that, we're not going to go political on this, but none of that's going to start coming to fruition until after the elections, right? Like that's just going to be,
no matter who wins.
No matter who wins. We got midterms and that, that puts a lot of pressure on people. We still have things like COVID still around, right? We've learned to manage it. We've learned to kind of not let it stop our daily routine, but it's still there. Mm-hmm. You still have the war going on, right? And none of these are predictable. You can't tell me when.
They're uncontrollable.
They're uncontrollable, right? So, but here's some things that lead us to have a little bit of a positive, and what makes it unpredictable. We know new car production is still down. It's down 40% in most cases, right? So the amount of inventory availability is still going to be suffered, right? Now people have started traveling again as COVID's lifted, so the rental cars are coming back into play and in certain fleets, but again, the work environment's changed. There aren't as many fleets being put out there. People are working from home, right? There's a lot of things that changed in the last 2 years, which don't lend to availability of inventory. Now, when there's a lack of inventory, there's a stability in the pricing. You follow me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it all circles around how people perceive, and maybe reality says, for disposable income. If it comes down to eating or making a car payment, guess which one wins, right? So people look at that. Mm-hmm. But again, the lack of or the reduced volume of available inventory will keep it a little more stable, which is why there's no real easy predictability to any of these questions at the moment.
So probably not looking at a big old crash, right? Like we've seen in the past.
But here's the bottom line, and here's the reason for this episode. If you put all of that as your first priority of concern, you would just lock your door and go home.
True. Mm-hmm.
Right? You would lock your door and go home. We have been very, very, very resilient over the last 2.5 years. And dealers have been more profitable than ever in most cases. We will find a way to stay resilient, right? If you just let outside influences determine everything you do, we'd all be out of business already. Right? You can't. It's been so chaotic. Chaotic's almost normal at the moment. It's not fun, but it's interesting. Keeps it from being boring, right? So don't let all the outside influences drill you into a place you don't want to be. Still stay on offense, but be cautious. Everyone's bringing up caution now. Now is not the time to be reckless. In the last 12 months, you could be a little real reckless, and we told you to stay on offense, and that's what you should have done, and obviously it prevailed. But now, you kind of want to paint a little bit, not necessarily total caution, but a little due diligence on your decision making, a little more effort into What are we going to do with it? What's the end game? What's the end retail? You are coming into fall market. You're coming into election season. There are things that traditionally we battle in the industry. So now is the time to, again, do your due diligence, make smarter decisions, because bad decisions now will come back to roost.
Now, if you're watching us and it's almost Christmas time because you watched us late and didn't watch us live, then it was the fall season and maybe things have changed. But really, every season has its own dynamic. There's usually always something coming up, something that's happening. The market's very volatile in a lot of ways because of things that are happening, not just current events, but really seasonal things as well that may take place. And so it's always a discussion to have. And it's things we just can't control. And so I think that's really the point of this episode is just don't get so fixated on what's happening and what's going on and what's taking place, but really start to take, as Bob said, a little bit of caution in your approach, but still always be on offense. Even though people say defense wins championships, I would say being on offense is a pretty good indicator, especially in this industry, of being successful.
Offense pays better.
It does pay a lot better, and you guys know that. We don't have to tell you that. All right,
Sounds good.
That's good. So a quicker episode, but we knew that it was a subject that was a little tough for us because we don't want to get political on this. We don't have a commercial either, but we want to just keep it very neutral, but still be able to share our thoughts and what's happening and what's taking place. So be successful by staying on offense, but be a little bit cautious in this market right now. And if you're watching this later next year in 2023, maybe all that stuff is past us.
But 31
is next. That was 30
next.
into season 3 on episode 31. We'll see you there.
We'll see you there.
Bye-bye.